Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. How you doing? Good? No? Fuck you. In all seriousness though, you're probably wondering where the next review is, and I promise you, it is indeed coming. But due to various circumstances, due to my poor planning, it's taking longer than anticipated. I worked on the script for about 6 months, I did about 8 minutes worth of editing and found out that there were fucking bird chirping noises in the recording because I didn't listen to the recording after I had recorded it. So because of my own incompetence, that video is taking a while to make. I also actually still have to film the live action segments. So while that video is made, I decided to have a little fun today. I wanted to take a look at Extra Credits' latest video. So I was scrolling through my Twitter feed one morning when I saw this post from Rizzy Draws showing the absolute sad state of Extra Credits' Social Blade, so I decided to go digging. I got curious. I got so curious that I decided to put on my curiosity glasses and go snooping. So I looked at Extra Credits' latest video, and as soon as I saw the title and thumbnail, I pretty much said to myself, oh, for fuck's sake. This is a video where Extra Credits legit tries to say that games like Return to Castle Wolfenstein, which by the way has a single player story, and tries to say that Nazis are bad, by the way. A game which you play as an allied soldier, one who is an Aryan and one who is staunchly opposed to Nazis because he's the son of a Polish Jew. Or CSGO, games that randomly choose which side you're on between terrorists and counter-terrorists or Nazis and allied soldiers, that they're undermining how bad Nazis and terrorists actually are by making them an interchangeable skin that has no bearing on a game's story or mechanics. I just wanted to have some fun today and I wanted to make a video, and I thought, hey, this could be a neat way to add some variety to the channel as I work on some reviews, and I also really just wanted to tear this video to pieces. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we?
There you are, playing the PvP in your World War II shooter, and all of a sudden, you're a Nazi. You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose this. Yet there it is. And it's treated no differently than playing a British soldier.
I love how that's the first line. As soon as you touch the controller, or as soon as you put your hands on the keyboard and mouse, you're a Nazi. As soon as you touch the controller, as soon as you even put your fingers on the input device of a fictional world that has no bearing on the real world, as soon as you do that, boom, everywhere. Nazi decorations and memorabilia as far as the eye can see. I don't know where these came from, but I have Hitler speeches hanging up on the wall, and I think I'm okay with that. And even if that's not what they're saying, and they're instead saying, oh, this is a skin of something that's incredibly abhorrent, we shouldn't force this upon people. I'll get to why that's a bullshit point later, but for the time being, you've already made yourself look pretty retarded right off the bat either way.
This is bad on so many levels.
You see this, kid? This is what we call forced. This is what we call a forced visual gag. The more you know.
No one should ever have a random chance of fighting for the Nazis. And we should never express that there's no meaningful difference between Nazis and Allied soldiers, or that they're functionally interchangeable.
It's not the game that's saying that. It's literally you assuming the game is saying that because the game doesn't say anything about the soldiers that you play as. And it doesn't say anything about the soldiers that you play as because there's nothing to them. You see, this thing is a vessel. This thing is an empty vessel for me to project myself onto. This is supposed to be a mannequin. That's all it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a virtual mannequin for me to carry out this competitive video game against real-world players. It's just a skin. That's all it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a social commentary on how Nazism is actually fine. It's not. It's just meant to be a skin and nothing more. But of course they're gonna say that, oh, it's more than a skin, when no, it's fucking not.
And before anyone equivocates and says not all German soldiers in World War II were Nazis, if they were wearing the swastika and are functioning as an arm of the Nazi government, then unless the game goes out of its way to tell you specifically that your particular character is not a Nazi, then they're a Nazi. In that multiplayer shooter, when it switched you to the German side, did it go out of its way to tell you that the person you're playing was pressed into service under threat of their life? Yeah, that's a big old nope.
The reason why games don't do this is because it's a massive waste in time and money on something that just doesn't matter. Giving multiplayer vessels a backstory is just counterintuitive to the point of these vessels existing in the first place. Because again, they're vessels. They're supposed to not have backstories. Again, the game is not focusing on story whatsoever. It's not focusing on the moral dilemma or the world struggle between Allied soldiers and Nazis. It's just a fucking skin. It's meant to be a skin that people are familiar with. You're meant to put yourself in the shoes of your uniform somewhat, so that you're in the mindset to go and defeat the enemies. But it's not to the point where someone all of a sudden becomes a neo-Nazi, or all of a sudden a neo-Nazi becomes Winston Churchill. Like, neo-Churchills, yeah. I like that.
Oh, and on a similar note, let's please stop forcing people to play as terrorists as well. There you are, playing your modern shooter, and all of a sudden you're a terrorist. You didn't ask for this, you didn't choose this, and yet second verse, same as the first. There it is. I mean, that's literally the name of your side in the game.
As soon as you touch the controller, guess what? You've sworn your allegiance to ISIS, and every single thing you do is hell-bent on destroying Western civilization. Second verse, same as the first. This isn't how things work.
We can do better than this. Even if you put aside all of the people who have had traumatic experiences with these groups, who have lost loved ones to terrorists, or who have had generations of their families wiped out by Nazis, no one should have to put on the costume of an ideology they find abhorrent without actually opting into it in your game. And by making people do so, we get them to stop thinking about it, to stop thinking of the meaning behind these things. We normalize them. We make them just window dressing for entertainment. Those uniforms, those symbols, become things that no longer inherently revolt us. They reduce our visceral reaction to seeing the embodiment of these ideologies.
Okay, so on the point of having this being thrust upon people who have suffered from traumatic events, that's a decent point, I suppose. But even then, if you don't want to play a game about Nazis because you are traumatically affected by Nazis, which not too many of us are these days, you should have the brain power to see a game like that and not buy it. And as for seeing virtual uniforms, again, it has nothing to do with real life, and you have such a visceral reaction to seeing a massive pixels on the screen, then I'm sorry, you're obviously too oversensitive to be playing this game in the first place. Should we have negative reactions to the things Nazis said and condemn their actions whenever it's necessary to condemn them? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that we should be saying the words Nazis are bad every 3 fucking seconds to bash the fact into people's heads that we don't like Nazis.
Now, does this make us totally ignore the history that comes with them? No.
That is exactly what you're saying. That is exactly what you just said. Wow.
But for some people, it moves them from the territory of revolting to just edgy.
Edgy things aren't inherently bad. Edgy things are allowed to be edgy. Freedom of speech, etc. Fucking, just because something you find edgy makes you feel slightly uncomfortable for 5 seconds, and that slight discomfort is something that you just can't get over, I'm sorry, that's no one's fault but yours. Calling something just edgy, or trying to insinuate that these things are just inherently awful just because they're edgy. No. People are allowed to find entertainment in whatever they want, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody and doesn't hurt themselves. Being edgy does not hurt anyone, except maybe the feelings of a small subsection of people for like 10 seconds. It ain't that deep, fam.
It makes scrawling a swastika on something change from unthinkable to just dangerous. It means you might not take iron crosses all over a website as a warning sign that you should immediately leave. And if you don't leave, you might start reading and buying into hateful ideas there.
Yeah, but this isn't how people's ideals or morals or values work. This isn't how humans work. This isn't how humans think. They don't just scroll through a website and see quotes like, gay people need to be killed, or all of the Jews need to be killed, all of the black people need to be killed. No one sees quotes like that on a random website and just thinks, yeah, that's a good stance. That doesn't happen. People's morals aren't that easy to influence. You know, they're not like a fucking analog TV connection where looking at it the wrong way can make it fuck up for no reason and just go out of whack and completely change. That's not how it works. People's ideals and morals are very rigid, very set in stone, and it's very hard to try and change that. It's very difficult for someone to actually try and have a conversation with someone and actually be effective in changing their morals. This is supposed to be Extra Bloody Credits, the channel that's supposed to be philosophical and smart and thinking about video games. Oh my lord, you have done like no thinking so far.
It seems like such a small and simple thing, but it's things like this that erode our safeguards against dangers we sacrifice so much to fight. By the time you've played 100 hours of being a Nazi, their voice stabs become memes and in-jokes with your friends. By the 1000th time you've respawned as a terrorist, you're either celebrating them or making fun of them.
Yes, because teams in games influence people's real-world ideals and morals that easily. No! Oh, and by the way, they become memes and in-jokes with your friends. Oh my god. I am the gatekeeper of private conversations. I like to try to dissuade them from doing things that I never have to hear because I'm not part of their private conversations.
So what do? That's easy. Don't make them morally equivalent.
The game isn't making them morally equivalent. The game doesn't apply morals to either of these characters. Again, this bastard is supposed to be a vessel. This thing is supposed to be empty. It is supposed to be void of individual thoughts and freedom. It is nothing more than a chess piece in this virtual game of chess. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. It's nothing less than that. It's nothing. It's literally nothing. The only reason why people all of a sudden think it is now, it was only people like you that made a massive monster out of things that aren't massive monsters.
Or simply take one of your non-odious sides and recolor them so that it's red versus blue, rather than Axis versus Allies.
Have you heard of this video game? It's pretty popular. I quite like it myself. It's called Halo, where half of the multiplayer modes allow you to pick between red versus blue. And if you thought that the Nazis and terrorists and counter-terrorists and allied soldiers were all completely empty in these games, this one's even emptier. Like, this one has, like, absolutely nothing even remotely questionable about it. This one is totally innocuous by comparison, at least going by your bloody standards.
A good example of a game that does this is Rainbow Six Siege. All of your bomb diffusion and hostage rescue multiplayer with no normalizing terrorists. In fact, by having all of the characters as counter-terrorists, training for a possible threat, it highlights how real and present of a threat that is.
And you know what? That's fine that Rainbow Six Siege does that. It's okay if a game highlights how terrible an issue is. If a game genuinely wants, even a multiplayer one, if a game genuinely wants to posit itself as a game that's like, hey, like Nazis and terrorists are bad, right? We should all not be bad, right? That's fine. I mean, granted, it's not really something that's applicable to Rainbow Six Siege because, again, I'm willing to bet, I haven't played it myself, so I can't really make a definitive comment, but I'm willing to bet that the characters in that game are just as big of vessels in that game as they are in pretty much every other multiplayer game. But it is indeed a nice alternative if you really do get that much in a tizzy. Like, I mean, I can't change people's personal choices. If you genuinely don't want to play Return to Castle Wolfenstein because you have a random chance of spawning as a Nazi, like, I'm gonna make fun of you for that. I'm gonna fucking berate you for that, but, like, that's your personal choice. That's your personal choice to not wear the skin of an ideology you find abhorrent. It's your choice to play Halo. It's your choice to play Rainbow Six Siege. Play whatever the fuck you want. The problem only comes in when assholes like you try to influence what other people try to play or what other people enjoy. That's the problem. You are the problem here.
And if you decide that you need to have both sides be playable, don't make them interchangeable.
You haven't explained why making them interchangeable is a bad thing yet. You've only just said they're bad, and you haven't explained why they're bad. And you haven't explained how making them interchangeable is inherently a bad thing.
Don't have players randomly spawn in as one or the other. Allow players to choose which side they're on. Now, of course, this has all sorts of in-game problems, such as creating shorter wait times for fascists, but you know what? Those wait times could be artificially extended if it meant players had an active choice in what teams they would represent if you're saying we need people playing Nazis in our games.
Well, guess what that is? Third verse, same as the 45th. That's just too much time and effort for something that doesn't matter. You're just gonna make people angry. Judging by the like to dislike ratio on this video, that's exactly what you did.
And if you're going to say, but we need it for historical reasons, then your game better actually be historical. You can't really just hide behind the fact you called your desert map El Alamein and say, but it's historical. And it's not a faithful reconstruction of the actual places the historical events occurred in. You can no longer say we need to have players take up arms in service of terror or hate.
I believe that you should be allowed to make whatever game you want, whether it's fictional or whether it's supposed to be historically accurate. And even if it borrows a setting from real-life events, it doesn't have to be historically accurate. I think what people are trying to say when they want to have Nazis and British people in a game versing each other for historical purposes, what they actually mean by that is that they should be allowed to have a recognizable foe and a recognizable hero. They should be able to be instantly recognizable to people. It's lazy, sure, but again, it doesn't hurt anyone, and it provides an easy in into creating good guys and bad guys for a game. Like, take Wolfenstein: The New Order, for example. That game is not historically accurate whatsoever. It begins nearing the end of World War II when the Allies were winning, and then they lose. The Allies lose the Second World War, and the Germans take over everything. It is now 1960 or 1965 or something like that, and the world is overrun with the bastards. They're everywhere. They control everything, and it's your job to overthrow them. That game is not historically accurate whatsoever. Why didn't you mention Wolfenstein: The New Order as a massive red flag? Oh, but it's fiction. It's allowed to have some things that are historically inaccurate.
Go fuck yourself.
And look, we're not saying we can't have games about World War II or about terrorism. We're not even saying we shouldn't make games where you play as a Nazi or a terrorist. But what we are saying is that the fact that you're playing as a Nazi or a terrorist in a game has to mean something.
Fiction isn't meant to mean anything, and it isn't meant to make a grand social comment. Not every single piece of fiction has to be a godforsaken statement about something.
And it can't just be a skin. It can't be something that a game randomly drops you into.
I bought this World War II shooter, played the multiplayer mode, and I read the description of the multiplayer mode, so I know exactly what's gonna happen, but I spawned in as the Nazi. Oh no!
And really, if we are saying anything in this episode, it's this. Games can do better. And in this particular case, it's not even that hard to do better. And it's no more costly to do better. All it requires is that we in the game industry be cognizant of the world around us and what these symbols we're drawing on mean.
Okay, with that point about not costing anymore, you're gonna have to back that one up, because like making assumptions based on feelings about how much being historically accurate is going to affect its budget, it's like, no, cite your shit, please.
That we think as we're building, not just about the game we're working on, but about the world as a whole. If we can do that, we can take a big step forward for the industry. We can stop helping to normalize Nazis.
Again, things are allowed to be set dressing for entertainment. Things are allowed to even be abhorrent. Things are allowed to shock, things are allowed to offend, things are allowed to make you feel uncomfortable. Freedom of expression. That means every idea should allowed to be expressed. Every single one, even ones that you hate. Let me tell you, I hate Nazism just as much as the next guy. I shouldn't need to say that, but in this day and age, I feel like I fucking have to. But just because I'm playing as a Nazi in a game or playing as a terrorist in a game doesn't mean that I all of a sudden become a Nazi or a terrorist or think these things are normal or think that other people playing this game also think it's normal, because, again, that's not how these things work. You understand this, right? I know this myself because I know for a fact this video isn't going to persuade any of you. This isn't meant to persuade anybody. It's meant for me to have some fun with, which I did quite a lot, let me tell you. So how about everybody just loosen up for a change and stop trying to police what other people watch and say and do, and the media they try to consume. Like, let's just stop. We're having fun. I miss fun. I like it when people just had fun. Not everything in the world needs to be a grand statement about how Nazis are terrible. Not everything has to be a grand statement about how shit Australia's economy is. Not everything has to be a massive statement about which side of the bed I fucking woke up on this morning. It doesn't have to be. Art is allowed to exist for art's sake, and entertainment is allowed to exist for entertainment's sake. It doesn't have to to make a statement. Fuck, going to Chick-fil-A or something doesn't have to be a statement. Basically, what I'm trying to say with this is that extra credits are a bunch of pretentious bastards who don't know how people's morals and ideals work, despite being the channel that's supposed to be the one overthinking about video games, but doesn't seem to do a whole lot of fucking thinking. Or maybe they do overthink. Either one is likely because they're not doing the right amount of fucking thinking. Anyway, I had a fun time. I had so much fun filming this, and I'm gonna have so much fun editing it, and I am going to probably commit channel suicide by uploading this. And I'll tell you what,
I'm ready for it.
so have yourself a fantastic day. Please ignore the fact that I had to carry my mic and pop filter in my arm because I don't have any actual proper setup yet. You have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time in the next video, which should be hopefully done in, maybe, I don't know, 6 years or something. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.